Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a truly wild stack of sources today. A collection of writings that are, well, sometimes laugh out loud funny, sometimes really sad, and often just plain bizarre. But if you look at them together, they offer this incredible kind of unfiltered look at human nature, how we interact or fail to interact.
It's quite the mix of characters and situations, isn't it? I mean, we're talking everything from like petty arguments and mistaken identities, all the way to existential crises and, yes, even a man living inside a crocodile.
Exactly. It feels less like just reading stories and more like peering into the messy, contradictory heart of being human.
That's a good way to put it.
So that's really the mission for this deep dive. We want to explore what these different stories, this strange blend of the, I guess, sublime and the ridiculous, what they tell us about society, the masks we wear, the gap between how we see ourselves and how others see us, and just the often absurd reality of life. Let's try and pull out the key insights, the really memorable moments, and make some sense of this fascinating collection together.
Sounds good. Let's dive right in.
Okay, we'll start with the stuff that leans maybe more towards comedy or social awkwardness. And there's this exchange of letters. It really sets the scene perfectly. It's from a novel in 9 letters.
Ah, yes. The back and forth between Ivan Petrovich and Fyodor Ivanitch.
Oh, yeah.
It starts off seeming simple enough, right? Fyodor Ivanitch is just wondering why Ivan Petrovich didn't visit him.
And Ivan Petrovich's reply is just classic passive aggression. He says he did come, but saw Yevgeny Nikolaevich there and felt perplexed.
Which, of course, just sends Pyotr Ivanitch into this spiral of defensive indignation. His response is this frantic, really elaborate explanation.
Oh, yeah.
It involves a messenger, a suddenly sick aunt rushing home to his wife, then rushing back to Ivan Petrovich's place, only to find Yevgeny Nikolaevich there again. And he ends up declaring himself to blame, 1,000 times to blame.
The absurdity just ramps up with every letter, doesn't it?
Totally.
Ivan Petrovich gets another one, threatening highly unpleasant consequences.
And Pyotr Ivanitch fires back, claiming he's cut to the heart, accusing Ivan Petrovich of insulting suspicions. Says he's being treated in a way which cannot be described by any seemly word. It gets quite dramatic.
It just completely breaks down, doesn't it, into accusations of deceit, treachery, forgetfulness of human duties, all apparently sparked by missed visits and this mystery Yevgeny Nikolaevich guy.
And it hits this amazing peak when Pyotr Ivanitch demands his galoshes back in the shortest possible time. The galoshes.
The galoshes. And then the twist. Ivan Petrovich gets these other letters revealing Pyotr Ivanitch's wife was writing to the very same Yevgeny Nikolaevich.
Ah, so it wasn't just paranoia.
Well, it's a complete communication meltdown. Fueled by suspicion. Maybe over something small, maybe something much bigger, given the wife's letters.
What really jumps out here is how fast these perceived slights and frankly terrible communication just spiral. Complete mistrust, frantic accusations. It tells you way more about their anxieties and social awkwardness than about whatever actually happened.
So the takeaway from these letters. Sometimes the biggest trauma, the biggest absurdity, it doesn't come from external events. It comes from our own insecurities, blown up by hilariously bad communication.
And speaking of hilariously bad situations, that leads us perfectly to another man's wife or the husband under the bed.
Oh, this one. Pure physical comedy.
Absolutely. The setup alone is brilliant. You've got a jealous husband, Ivan Andreevich. He's following his wife, convinced she's off to meet someone, and he ends up hiding under a bed in a totally random apartment where his wife isn't even there.
Only to find out.
Yes. There's another man already hiding under the same bed.
You couldn't write it.
And the dialogue from under there, in the dust, in the dark, it's fantastic. Ivan Andreevich is trying so hard to keep his dignity, declaring it's the first time that I've found myself in such a nasty position.
While the other guy's just annoyed, calls him unpleasant society. They're having this whispered argument under the furniture while people are just walking around above them.
Then the poor little dog, Amushka.
Oh, Amishka.
Ivan Andreevich accidentally strangles it in his panic. And then later you hear the woman crying, Amishka! Amishka! It's just perfect absurdity.
His attempt to explain himself when he finally crawls out is priceless, too. He calls it an absurd story, a most comical story.
Trying to convince them he's not a thief. Just a respectable guy caught in, well, a very awkward spot.
And the way he doubles down, or maybe it's just pure desperation, he promises to come back tomorrow. And bring his own wife and the dead lapdog.
A dead lapdog. To prove his story and, I guess, make friends, you can just picture the look on their faces.
So the insight here. Social rules, jealousy, just completely failing to handle things directly. It all mixes together to create these profoundly ridiculous, undignified scenes that expose our inner chaos.
Definitely. Okay, so moving away from just the mishaps, these sources also get into some sharp social critique. Let's talk about status, self-deception, and that truly disastrous wedding party. General Ivan Ilyich Perlinsky.
Right, the general. He's just got his promotion, sees himself as this desperate liberal, loves talking about humanity as the cornerstone of reforms, very full of himself, very keen to project this image of being progressive and, approachable.
But then he crashes his subordinate's wedding party, Soldanemov's wedding, totally uninvited.
Yeah, he just shows up at this modest little house down a wooden pavement, expecting to just dispense his humanity with this sort of condescending charm, asking, "Not in the way, am I?"
And the contrast between his grand self-image and the actual party is so stark. This rundown house, dust, smoke, noise, a street band playing quadrilles.
You can feel his internal struggle, can't you? He wants to be the generous, modern gentleman, but inside he's got this aching of his heart, this gnawing in his soul. He's deeply uncomfortable.
And the details of the party just make it worse. The squash galantine, the salt herrings and vodka for everyone else, but champagne brought out just for him.
Right.
The other guests are awkward. Akim Petrovich is trying to be polite, but then there's that sharp young guy from the comic paper.
Ah, yes. He sees right through Perlinsky.
Completely. And then comes the climax. Perlinsky, drunk, tries to give this rambling, noble speech about humanity and regeneration.
And it just falls flat. He gets interrupted by shouts.
And then, even more brutally, by that young man from the comic paper who just lays it bare. Yes, you came to show off your humanity. You've hindered the enjoyment of everyone. You've been drinking champagne. And I suspect that you are one of those high officials who are a little too fond of the young wives of their clerks.
Ouch. It's just a brutal public takedown of his whole act. He collapses, wakes up the next day just drowning in deadly shame and agony.
Yeah.
He even thinks about becoming a monk in his despair.
Why do you think that specific thought, becoming a monk, pops into his head right then? In that moment of total shame? What's that telling us?
That's a really interesting point. I think it shows the depth of his failure, how complete it feels to him. It's not just embarrassment. He feels morally destroyed. So he considers the most extreme withdrawal possible, like a penance maybe, or just escape. It shows how utterly his carefully built identity is just crumbled.
But that profound shame, it doesn't actually stick, does it?
No. Back at the office, he makes this brief, awkward attempt to patch things up with Soldanimov, but then quickly decides on severity is severity and nothing but severity. He snaps right back.
So the powerful insight here, it's a masterful takedown of performative progressiveness, social climbing, that hypocrisy.
Definitely.
It's this painful picture of the clash between how we want to be seen and the messy reality, especially when our defenses are down. And it shows how fast deep shame can just flip back to old, defensive, authoritarian habits instead of real change.
Yeah, it really shows how fragile that public persona can be and how easily we revert to type under pressure.
Okay, let's shift gears emotionally. Some of these sources explore poverty, suffering, but also these unexpected flashes of morality, of grace. An honest thief is a key one here.
Right. This story focuses on a lonely narrator and his, pitiful lodger, Emelian Ilyich, a man really brought down by drink, just sits there silently, like a dog, the text says.
Yeah, very bleak picture.
And the story pivots around the theft of the narrator's coat, his greatcoat. The servant, Astafy Ivanovich, is obviously upset, gives chase. The narrator's angry at first, but it's mixed with pity for Emelian.
And the narrative really zooms in on Emelian's last days. He's there, quiet, clearly suffering, wrestling with something he hasn't said. The narrator feels this immense pity, his heart breaking for this good-for-nothing fellow, feeling like he's losing a son of my own. It's quite moving.
And then that quiet deathbed confession. Emelian, barely speaking, admits. Those writing breaches, it was sort of I who took them, Astafy Ivanovich. He means the coat, but calls it writing breaches. Maybe showing his confusion or just how broken he is.
But Astafy's reaction, that's the heart of it, isn't it? No anger, no condemnation, just simple forgiveness. God forgive you, Emelian Anushka, you poor, sorrowful creature. Depart in peace.
It's such a moment of profound, basic human compassion for a petty crime by a broken man.
You can draw a line from that moment of grace to the memory in The Peasant Murray.
Yeah, the contrast there is stark. The immediate setting is prison brutal. full of loud abuse and quarreling, hideous, disgusting songs, just dehumanizing.
Yeah, a truly awful environment. But the narrator flashes back to this childhood memory. As a little boy, he hears someone cry, "Wolf!" And he's terrified, runs to this peasant, Murray.
And Murray, who seems like this rough, thick-set peasant. He doesn't laugh, doesn't dismiss the boy's fear.
No.
He stops working, looks at the boy's genuine terror, and just gently comforts him, strokes the ground, smiles with a sort of motherly tenderness, and reassures him, why, there's no wolf.
Such a simple, powerful image. So the insight from these two, they show that even in the depths of degradation, poverty, really harsh circumstances, these moments of conscience, guilt, and deep, simple human kindness can just break through.
Yeah.
They contrast the world's brutality with this unexpected tenderness and show how memory and grace can persist, even cut through intense suffering.
Okay, now for something completely different and genuinely bizarre, we have to talk about the satire in The Crocodile.
Yes. The Crocodile.
It starts with Ivan Matveyevich at an exhibition, and, well, he gets swallowed whole by a crocodile.
Yeah.
But he's alive inside.
An absolutely wild premise. Yeah. But the genius is Ivan Matveyev's reaction. It's not panic. Yeah. It's immediate adaptation. He sees it as a unique opportunity.
Right. He's literally inside a crocodile, and his first thought is how to leverage it. He says it's soft and warm, and instantly sees it as a platform for his ideas, a way to get influence.
Yeah. He's planning to use the time to work on his thoughts about the telegrams of the previous day, critique society. He's even planning his wife, Elena Ivanovna's social climb. Wants her to be a brilliant literary lady with a salon, compares her to our Russian Yevgenia tour.
His descriptions from inside are weirdly clinical. A huge empty sack made of gutta percha. He's already cooking up strange theories about nature and living inside animals, planning to share them with statesmen and journalists. It's nuts.
But the reactions of the people outside are almost more absurd.
True. The German owner of the crocodile immediately sees the profit angle, charging admission, thinking he'll make 50,000 rubles, maybe 100,000 every day.
And Elena Ivanovna's grief. It vanishes pretty quickly. She gets excited about being a widow, needing a great many new dresses for the salon she's already planning.
And her main worry about transporting her husband in a tank isn't his safety or dignity.
No, it's that it would look absurd and she'd be ashamed for my visitors to see it.
Unbelievable. And the newspaper report just nails the tone, calling Ivan Matveyevich a well-known bon vivant looking for a new branch of industry in the crocodile's cuisine.
So the biting insight from the crocodile, even when you're literally swallowed by the most outrageous situation imaginable, our basic human drives for status, profit, attention just bubble right up.
Yeah.
It's a masterclass in mocking intellectual pretension, ambition, greed, the media's shallowness, all of it.
It really does make you wonder, what won't people do for attention and status?
Which kind of brings us to our final section. This is where we get into the most philosophical and maybe the most disturbing territory, starting with the dream of a ridiculous man.
Right. This narrator starts out in a state of complete nihilism, totally disconnected, thinking about suicide because nothing matters. He sees himself as fundamentally ridiculous.
And the turning point is that encounter with the little girl on the street. She asks for help.
And he rejects her, harshly, because he thinks, well, I am ending my life anyway, so what does it matter? But that act becomes the seed of his crisis.
Exactly. He goes home, plans to shoot himself, but he's tormented by this question. If I'm about to become nothing, why do I feel pity for her? Why do I feel shame for what I did?
And that leads to this huge realization. Life and the world somehow depended upon me now. He realized he was still human, still capable of feeling, of connecting. And that mattered.
This intense emotional state then triggers a dream. He dreams he shoots himself and he's carried through space to another planet, a planet just like Earth.
But the people there, they live in perfect innocence, perfect harmony, beautiful, kind, no science, no cruelty, no sin, guided by intuition, by love, singing songs about each other, about nature, living in this all-embracing universal feeling.
Like a paradise. But here's where the dream becomes, as he says, the horribly true part he couldn't have imagined. He realizes he corrupted them.
Yeah. He, the man from Earth, introduced deceit, sensuality, jealousy, the idea of suffering, science which led to the guillotine, even religions based on non-existence, on death.
He watches their fall. It's rapid, terrible. They build cities, fight wars, forget their innocence, embrace suicide because they now believe truth only comes through suffering. It's like Eden in reverse, and he's the serpent.
It's a powerful, devastating dream. And that dream of corrupted purity is then set against the bleak reality in Bobok,
Right. Bobok takes place in a cemetery. The narrator starts hearing the voices of the recently dead.
And he learns about their condition, this limited consciousness called Bobok that lasts for a few months after death, located somewhere in the head or in the skull, apparently.
And what's their plan for this last bit of consciousness?
To use it to drop all pretense, all shame, and just indulge in all the depravity, the hidden vices they kept secret in life. They talk about the stench of the soul as a moral thing, revealing their ugliest hidden thoughts.
It's grotesque.
The narrator is horrified. He feels total revulsion at this depravity of sodden and rotten corpses, this depravity of the last aspirations.
So the core insight from these two, these contrasting pieces, they give us this stark, really unsettling look at humanity's potential, both for that utopian purity we see in the dream and for utter shocking depravity, which we see on the corrupted planet and hear from the cemetery voices. They make you think about consciousness, suffering. Maybe the loss of innocence is just part of being human on Earth, and that maybe when stripped bare, human nature leans towards a pretty disturbing lack of morality.
It definitely raises some deep, uncomfortable questions about truth, innocence, sin, what life is even for.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. We have certainly covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
We really have.
From, social comedy and status anxiety.
Yeah.
Through that biting satire.
Yeah.
To moments of real guilt, grace.
Yeah.
And these huge existential questions.
It is a complex picture, often contradictory. These different stories, when you put them together, they give you this incredibly rich and, sometimes uncomfortable look at ourselves, at society.
You do.
They keep highlighting our contradictions, that weird mix of the sublime and the ridiculous inside us.
They really challenge you, make you think, make you want to peel back the layers of polite society and see what might be underneath.
So given everything we've looked at, the hypocrisy, the absurdity, the hidden darkness, the potential for corruption, where do you, the listener, see genuine humanity? Where does hope manage to shine through in these stories? Or is it all just two sides of the same complex, messy human coin, the comedy and the tragedy?
That's definitely something to chew on as you think about these fascinating sources.